What's going on, everybody, and welcome to the Canadian Football Fanatics. Folks, we have done it. The CFL season is here. Week 1 officially kicks off tomorrow. And Blake and I are here to talk about all things Week 1 and all things CFL. Blake, thanks for joining me. How you doing, buddy?
I'm doing good, Cole. I'm doing good. Yeah, we were talking before we went live that it's kind of crazy that I was walking back to my Airbnb with a friend of mine after the Grey Cup in Hamilton last year, and then we were saying how long the winter is going to be, and all of a sudden winter's gone, summer's almost here, and CFL football is kicking off again tomorrow night.
Yes. So on today's show, folks, as promised, we'll be joined by BC Lions starting safety Adrian Greene at about 6:30 p.m. Pacific time tonight. But first, Blake and I will preview the BC Lions at Toronto Argonauts game on Sunday. And then afterwards, around 7 o'clock, Shane Ryan from 13th Man Sports will be joining us to be going over some of the spreads and picks of the week, as well as Blake giving our picks of the week, as well as previewing the rest of the matchups in the CFL. Blake, all the excitement has been building on this offseason. We've been doing a few shows here and there. How excited are you to actually be talking about some football being played tomorrow?
Dude, I'm so excited. It's crazy. Unfortunately, the defending Grey Cup champions don't get to start at home, but I won't go into that rant because we'll be here for a couple minutes. So just to have CFL football back, it's absolutely amazing, and I'm so glad we get to talk about it for a full season this year.
Absolutely. So before we get going, as always, if you guys are tuning in here tonight on Twitter, on YouTube, please smash the like button first and foremost. And as always, please, most importantly, subscribe to the YouTube channel. I believe we are at 169, the magic number of 169, Blake. Let's try to get up to 200 by, I believe I said Canada Day, if I'm not mistaken, Blake. So we still got some time. 31 more followers to go. Excuse me, subscribers to go on the YouTube. But, Blake, we did have some news this week. We did officially start our Twitter page. And I guess I'll kind of maybe toss that over to you since you're doing most of that responsibility.
Yeah, no, it's been a lot of fun. We've had some good interaction. I tweeted out our first official, or one of our first official tweets, I guess. You can say I asked people to give us their bold predictions for the season, and that worked out pretty good. There was a lot of interaction with that, and then I asked people to name some people that they met in the CFL family, kind of online, and then. Later on met in real life because of course that's how our show started, and that got a lot of interaction, so that was really good to see. We threw up a poll this week, or today I should say, on the week 1 matchups, and we'll check on that a little later in the show.
Absolutely, Blake. So, before we get to hot takes, Blake, actually, let's actually start with hot takes because, as you mentioned, one of our first official tweets on the account, I believe you can follow us at underscore CF Fanatics on Twitter. So head over there and please follow. That would be greatly, greatly appreciated, both Blake and I. But speaking of hot takes, Blake, you did say that the reaction did get a pretty good one. I know you've had a few, but I don't believe I gave one, and I've been thinking a little bit, and I'm going to give one that's a little bit close to home since we're BC Lions fans here on the show tonight, Blake, and I think it's going to be quite the shocker to you, maybe quite the shocker to some of our listeners here tonight. But talking about a lot of if, ands, or buts here as well. I'm saying in this occasion, if the Lions were to maybe fail to make the Grey Cup, I believe this is maybe the third year in a row that maybe we were to lose in a Western final or something like that. I think it's kind of the writing on the wall. It's time to maybe move on or kind of trying to start to shift things. And because I don't think it'll be totally on Vernon Adams this year, I believe um, the maybe, if you will, scapegoat could be somewhere else. So I believe my hot take is going to be if the BC Lions don't make the Grey Cup this year, I believe Rick Campbell will be gone in 2025 and Ryan Phillips will be taking over as head coach of the BC Lions. Blake, since you're a Lions fan, and anybody that's tuning in, if you're Lions fans, let me know what you guys think in the comments. But what do you think about that initially when that comes to mind?
Yeah, I definitely think that's a hot take because I don't believe Coach Campbell's been here that long. What is he in, Coach, or season three, season four, something like that? But I don't actually mind it because it's been made very clear from the really the start of training camp that this season is Grey Cup or bust for the BC Lions. And if they are unable to even get to the Grey Cup game, which is kind of what you're predicting, or at least in this scenario, then I think that you're right that someone's going to have to take the fall for that. And I think it might have to be Coach Campbell.
Yeah, and I would push back on you, Blake, especially in pro football. I think 3 years is kind of you've had your time, right? Not that he's like he hasn't had success, excuse me. The Lions have been very successful. Obviously finished second place in the last 2 years, making it to a West final. Um, being within a puncher's chance of Winnipeg the last two West finals. I think it just comes down to not being able to get it done against the Winnipeg, if that maybe is the case, or just not being able to get it done in general. So I think somebody kind of has to take the fall. I don't believe it'll be Vernon Adams, because I think Vernon Adams will play up to his standard this year. I believe we just also gave him a contract extension. If I'm not mistaken, I believe Coach Campbell came here after COVID, so the 2021 season, signed an extension in 2022 through the 2024 season, if I'm not mistaken. So I believe Blake actually he could be walking into his free agency year. Although I know kind of contracts in the CFL aren't too publicized, so I could be wrong in that. But if I'm not mistaken, Blake, I think Coach Campbell could be in his last season under contract. So if that is the case, I think the Lions would look to maybe look in house with a Ryan Phillips who's been around, hasn't left the Lions organization in his entire CFL career. So I think he's kind of an easy fill-in. I thought about Jordan Maximic for a little bit, but I think seeing younger guys around, kind of like maybe a Corey Mace, a Ryan Dinwiddie, some of these younger guys that are getting opportunities in the CFL. I think Ryan Phillips, at 41 years of age, 3 years older than Corey Mace, I think could definitely maybe get a possibility. And if it's not with the BC Lions, I think in a few years, if they continue to have a good defense, that he can get definitely interviews and maybe land somewhere as a head coach down the road. So Blake, without further ado, I guess, should we get into our first week one matchup of the season for our BC Lions?
Yeah, let's do it.
Okay, so as we talked about earlier, our BC Lions are traveling all the way to the East Coast to take on the Toronto Argonauts on Sunday at, I believe, 4 o'clock p.m. Pacific time. So that's 7 o'clock back east. Blake, what are your initial thoughts when you think about opening the season against the Toronto Argonauts?
I think it's a good matchup for the BC Lions. We know the what's the publicity I'll say around the Argonauts. We know that Chad Kelly, of course, will not be the quarterback for the Argos in that game. So I think the Lions they'll have a tough time, no doubt about that. The Argos, their defense is still supposed to be really good this season. But the offense, I don't think will be anywhere near what it was last year. So I think the Lions' defense will feast, if you will, on that Toronto Argonauts offense.
Okay, Blake. So before we get into the matchup of BC versus Toronto, what are you most excited about this year on the field for the BC Lions?
The BC Lions are Jackson.
Oh, sorry, folks. Um, But as I was saying, the most thing that I'm excited about this year for the BC Lions is I think kind of being able to reload on the fly. Still having some of the same core, but if you look on defense, you look on offense. There's a lot of new pieces. On defense specifically, Josh Wood slides into a starting linebacker position for older Bo Lacumbo last season. So I like that because I think Josh Woods is kind of on an upward trajectory, whereas Bo is kind of on the latter half of his career. You look in the secondary, obviously, we just cut Marcus Sales, Brian, who's been a very steady contributor in the comments here the last few weeks, says Marcus Sales Green looks good on you. Marcus Sales gone. Obviously, TJ Lee is going to miss a majority of the season. Um, Jalen Edwards Cooper is a free agent slash maybe going back to Saskatchewan. So, you know, there could be possibly three new starters in the secondary. Obviously, you have Adrian Greene that's going to be starting at safety, who'll be joining the program a little bit later. But he split time with I believe Quincy Moget last year, if I'm not mistaken, as kind of that dual starting safety. They both split time, so not even he's kind of coming back and having continuity in the secondary. So could be up to kind of three or four new faces in the secondary. Um, that being said, I believe the replacements that should be coming in, Seontae Evans, depending on what the depth chart looks like, whether it's maybe Christophe Boyu at maybe one of those halfback positions. Maybe Santi Evans is on the outsides from what we heard at training camp. Is the lines have kind of been shuffling and kind of really haven't officially stamped anyone at one position. We were hearing Adrian Greene were even taking reps outside at corner. Seontae Evans taking a little bit of reps. So I would imagine the kind of starting five will look somewhat like any one of I think Gary Peters, Seontae Evans, Christophe Boyu, and then some sort of combination of. I know the coaches have been high on. I believe the Jordan Perryman cornerback, as well as Ronald Kent has been taking reps at half as well with the starting unit. So you could be hearing some of those guys. Um, for Canadian sake, I kind of hope it's Christophe Boyu, but I think already with how many Canadians we've already seen that'll be starting for the BC Lions, I think that'll probably be unlikely, and Christoph will most likely be safe for more of a special teams type role. But you never know. Maybe he starts at one of those halfback positions as well. So stay tuned. So the things that I'm looking most forward to is just the Lions being able to reload on both sides of the ball. Obviously, being able to stay, I think, elite in the Western Division, and hopefully being able to stay elite in the CFL in general. So last season, obviously, they were on the brink. A lot of people talk about a lot of the losses, obviously, a lot of the big names, right? Matthew Betts, Keon Hatcher, TJ Lee being out for a lot of the season. Lucky Whitehead, Dominic Rhymes, obviously not being there. But I think, obviously, one for one, names aren't, going to step in and fill in. But I think, just and hopefully I'm not wearing I guess the fan goggles too much here, folks, but I think uh, the fill-ins that are I guess the replacements, excuse me, are going to be able to keep the standard, if not maybe even exceed that, or maybe I think with some of these pieces get younger, able to extend the Lions winning ways, I guess, if you will, and kind of like I mentioned, being able to reload on the fly, staying good, being able to kind of move some pieces out, move some pieces back in, whether that's in the draft, free agency, get a little bit younger, as well as staying good, winning a lot of ball games, which I think the Lions are going to do this season. So that is my most excited about on the field this year. When it comes to some strength and weaknesses for the BC Lions this year, I'm very, very curious on, in recent years we've seen, I guess, because it's kind of some of these guys are kind of starting to come into starting roles now. Some of these depth pieces, you think last year Aiden Aberhart, Josh Woods, obviously, some of these, Adrian Greene, some of these guys that are stepping into starting roles. Last year, I thought the depth in the BC Lions was pretty good, and obviously depth is kind of a tricky thing to use because obviously you can maybe say depth is good, but when it gets in there and there's a little bit of drop off and you kind of start to turn on your ways, I think it's kind of hard it's a hard thing to kind of hang your hat on depth when you say a team has good depth. So I don't want to kind of lean in on that too much, but I thought the Lions' depth last year was a lot better than coming into this year. I think um, with an 18 game season, obviously 21 weeks. Injuries are going to happen, especially at some of the offensive positions. I don't love depth at I think running back's kind of unproven. Obviously at quarterback, Jake Delagala is going to be quarterback number two. Not too sure how I feel about that. Obviously, we saw Dakota Prukop get cut, and Chase Bryce will step into that quarterback three role. We heard rumblings, I believe. Nothing is official yet, but Vernon Adams could, I guess, be the BC Lions short yardage quarterback, which is never a good thing when it comes to health for a franchise quarterback. So definitely a concern when it comes to depth, I think, on both sides of the ball. So that would kind of be some of my weaknesses. But, I think strength is just kind of the firepower on both sides. The firepower on the offense with I think five, six, maybe even seven receivers that I think can dress for you on game day and give you some valuable reps. I'm talking about maybe Keon Hatcher coming back down the road, and then from what we've seen with Stanley Berryhill in the preseason, I really enjoyed what he gave the Lions in his time in the preseason. Obviously, giving them some special teams ability with his return. Um, his return assets. So interested to see. I think Stanley Berryhill will be dressed on game days just because of that. But obviously, we see Terry Williams will take a majority of that role until I would think Keon Hatcher is back. And then maybe Stanley Berryhill's on kind of the odd man out. Maybe he drops back down to the practice roster. But I like what I've seen with Stanley Berryhill. I think he can be a quality depth guy as well. It can come in, step in. He's not going to blow people away, but I think he can come in. You obviously saw a nice that out route that he dived and caught the ball. It was a nice crisp route, nice ability to go dive and strong hands with it. So like what I saw from Stanley Berryhill, we were hearing good things from him from training camp as well. Shout out to cameraman, media guy Nick Kowalski, obviously friend of the podcast, came on the show last Thursday actually, and we're talking to BC Lions. He was mentioned Stanley Berryhill's name up at FanFest in Kamloops as a guy that was standing out someone to keep an eye out. So I think the strengths on offense, obviously the firepower, like I mentioned, William Stanback hopefully is able to stay healthy. But um, then you look on defense, I think a lot of playmakers in the back, I guess 7 or 8, if you will. I think Gary Peters is going to have another elite season, as always, from what we're hearing. And I think we're only going to see Adrian Greene take advantage of this opportunity here. But we're hearing that big things could be on the horizon for Adrian Greene. I believe Ryan Phillips was kind of on some of the first and now BC Lions type media shows and kind of giving him some high praise. So super excited to see some of the guys there, and then obviously up front, you think of a guy like Sione Tiama, who I think stepping into his own, Pete Robertson, who's a veteran, and then inside obviously a guy that's quietly been doing it for a few years for the Lions now. I think the Lions team gives them a lot of credit as a team, but outside of this locker room, I don't know if Josh Banks get enough credit for how good he is in the CFL. And then obviously the addition of Vancouver born Christian Covington coming home. I think we actually we saw the number switch today, folks. I believe in the preseason he was wearing let me see here if I have it correctly. He was wearing 96. He switched to 56 if I saw correctly today. He updated the Instagram bio as well as we saw a Instagram picture as well in 56. So interesting to see. I wonder what the reason behind the switch is. So curious to see on that front. But I think that group's going to be very good. I think the depth inside is definitely up there when it comes to in the CFL when it comes to interior defensive linemen. Questionable on the edge. You think of guys like Siddiqui, possibly that Josh Archibald maybe getting some more snaps on the edge there. Curious to see how the depth on the edge rush on the edge position looks, but I think a young fellow like Sione Tiama can take a majority of the snaps. Pete Robertson's obviously a veteran. I think Siddiqui's going to kind of do a majority of the rotating in with him. But curious to see. I think the Lions have some firepower on both sides when it comes to playmaking ability, being able to get to the passer, turn over the ball on defense, and run the football with William Stanback, catch and get into the end zone with some of the receivers on the roster. So when it comes to the matchup, first Toronto, I have a few things that come into mind, and we will give our three keys to the game here in a moment, folks. But before we do, going to talk a little bit about the matchup, and I guess I'll kind of include Brian into the show here a little bit more because I know he's enjoying it. He's been a loyal contributor here on the chat here, but he says that Argo secondary is a huge question mark this year. Definitely a lot of question marks for sure, but I think the Argos are going to be a lot more competitive than teams, or maybe excuse me, fans are willing to admit. I think definitely some question marks, right? Obviously quarterback, secondary as Brian talks on, but I think where people tend to maybe forget is I think the value of the trenches, and I think arguably the best offensive line in the CFL. I think he's going to be able to give guys like Kadeem Carey, Daniel out of Deboye, Hopefully, I'm saying that name correctly. I always end up butchering that, but I think guys like that going to open up run lanes. And then, Cameron Dukes is very much unproven. I'm not going to think he's going to set the world on fire. I definitely don't think he's going to set. I definitely don't expect him to do too much with versus the BC Lions in week one. I think I expect for him to kind of get used to, the expectations of being a starter, that pressure. So just curious to see some of those positions, but I think the offensive line being that good, the defensive line being that good with some of the pieces that they've already had, as well as bringing over Jake Serezna, I think will help them out on the defense and the offensive side, being able to cover up some of those areas that are weaknesses and make them a little bit better, rise them to bring them to their level, I guess. And then Brian says, I'm curious to see if McKinnis will steal the majority of vacant targets. I believe he will. Brian, I think I said it a few times. I'm sure you've heard it now. I'm beating a dead horse, but I believe McKinnis and Couture are going to be 1,000-yard Canadian receivers this year. I really have high expectations for the both of them. I think they're going to be doing a lot of good things for the Lions this year. I think just the targets are there until Keon Hatcher gets back. Alex Hollins will obviously demand, receiver one type responsibilities until then, but Javon Holland, Javon Katoy, and Justin McKinnis, I expect them to have big, big years. And, we've seen the last few years, Lucky Whitehead, Brian Burnham, Keon Hatcher, all those guys go for 1,000 or close to, and Javon was on the verge last year. Justin broke out, I think, kind of a little bit more last year with the Lions, getting more of an opportunity. I think those guys just are on an upward trajectory as far as I'm concerned. So, getting into the keys of the game for the BC Lions, folks. 3 keys of the game I will give to you for the BC Lions this week when it comes to the matchup versus the Toronto Argonauts this week. Week 1. I can't believe it's already here, folks. For any Lions fans tuning in, let me know your guys' 3 keys of the week this week for the BC Lions. And stay tuned. We can even give, if you guys are, Ottawa fans, Calgary fans, whoever it may be, I guess actually no. Excuse me. Ottawa is not playing in week 1. So if you are, Montreal, if you're Calgary, anybody but Ottawa fans, stay tuned for later. You guys can contribute into the chat. Let us know how you're feeling about your guys' fellow matchups. We will be doing our picks of the week. Hopefully, Blake will be joining us back again soon. So when it comes to the 3 keys of the game, let's start with first and foremost. I'm going to go with I think maybe the obvious here, but get after Cam Dukes. I think don't let this guy feel comfortable. Make this guy feel pressure. I think where you can affect him first and foremost is up the interior. Push the pocket from the interior. Let Sione Tiama, let guys like Pete Robertson collapse around the edge and be able to clean up. But I think Josh Banks, Christian Covington are going to be able to do that. I think with Josh Banks commanding a lot of those double teams inside, Christian Covington, I was already kind of ISO camming him, if you will, keep an eye on him in the preseason. He was, maybe take what you will, shucking some offensive linemen around there in the preseason game versus the Elks. So, like I said, take that for what you will. Is in the preseason, and it was against, if I'm not mistaken, the Elks backups, if I'm not mistaken. So, take with what you will. Get after Cameron Dukes, I think, is the most important for the BC Lions first and foremost this week. Number 2 is establish William Stanback. You brought him here for a reason. Let's make that pay off. I think that'll only help Vernon Adams long term. I think people maybe outside of myself, I definitely have this opinion, but I think a lot of people maybe forget, the rumors about, the BC Lions offering the contract of Brady Oliveira. They were very much in play in the running back market, I believe, this offseason. And if it wasn't Brady, they had their guy in Will, who was kind of 1A, 1B. I don't know if I want to put Will in that category. Maybe I'd say 1 and 2. But they obviously couldn't get Brady to leave his hometown Winnipeg Blue Bombers. They go with William Stanback, who I think is going to be rejuvenated. He looked great in the preseason. I'm expecting good things from Will Stanback this season. So curious to see, and I think you got to establish him right away. I think he'll be the key to a MOP type season for Vernon Adams, not having to feel all the pressure of the burden of doing it all. I think when we saw the best of Nathan Rourke, he had a James Butler, a running back 1 who you leaned on all season long to carry the load. not only rushing but catching as well. I think Will Stanback can do that. And I just think you invested in the run game. Why not take advantage of it? We've heard for a number of years now. BC kind of just leaning into the pass game and just kind of ignoring the run game. I think it's time to um, run the ball a little bit more, right? Now, and obviously nothing crazy, right? I'm a former quarterback myself. I'm not trying to take the ball out of Vernon Adams' hand because I think the BC Lions offense are at their best when he has the ball in his hands, but to a certain extent, you got to take some of the pressure off from throughout an 18 game season too. He doesn't have to win all 18 games by himself, and most importantly, he doesn't have to win all three playoff games hopefully by himself. So, established Will Stanback is number two, and then don't play with. Um, I guess maybe wrong way to put it, but don't play with your food. And I'm more so speaking with kind of the lack of experience with Cameron Duke. I think the Lions being, I believe, 6.5 point favorites. I believe Blake mentioned earlier on the show in Toronto against the Toronto Argonauts, who were a good team last year, 16-2 if I'm not mistaken. Obviously, they had the Cam Dukes coming in, so that has a little bit to do with it. But other than that, I think the Lions are favored for a reason and need to take care of business on the road. I think it's important to get off to a fast start, making sure you don't drop into these Eastern Division games. Now, ultimately, at the end of the day, losing a Week 1 game to the Toronto Argonauts isn't the biggest of deals because obviously there's no division implications, anything like that. It's just not the best feeling to get off to a losing start. So those are my three keys: get after Cam Dukes, establish William Stanback, don't play with your food. I believe I have my co-host back. Blake, we got you back, okay, buddy? And thanks for joining me.
Yeah, sorry about that, Cole. Had a bit of an emergency that I had to deal with. Apologize to all the listeners. Unfortunately, when something comes up, I have to deal with it right away. But I'm back now, and I'll be here for the rest of the show. So once again, apologies to everyone. Didn't mean to step out there like that.
No worries, Blake. No worries. We covered pretty much everything. We will be joined by Adrian Greene here shortly, folks. But Blake, quickly, I kind of went through a few things here. We can go, over some of my answers here before we're joined by Adrian. But, give my three keys of the game, Blake. I'm curious if you had any of yours. Like I mentioned, I had get after Cam Dukes, establish William Stanback, and don't play with your food. Are there any, keys to the game for the BC Lions that come to mind for you?
No, I think you definitely covered it there. I'll be interested to see how Vernon Adams kind of has his new receivers this year integrates pardon me his some of his older receivers like Javon Katoy, Alex Hollins. As Lions fans all know by now, Keon Hatcher's going to be out for most of the season, so he'll be done till probably around Labor Day. But other than that, I think you covered it really well, Cole.
Thanks, buddy. So, we did have a few more from Brian in here. He says, "Stand back." Oh, geez, sorry, Brian. Threw you off the screen like that. Stand back needs to stay healthy. He has a lot of injury troubles. Hopefully, BC has a good backup plan. As I mentioned, Brian, don't have too much to tell you on. I believe the backup running back will be Jordan Tyrell, number 28, who was in the preseason. Obviously, the Lions cut kind of somewhat surprisingly starting running back from last year, Taekwon Smoke Mizell, and then I believe I saw Percy Ajay OBC. I know I'm saying that wrong, and Nick was telling us how to say it last week, but I believe he was cut as well. So I think Jordan Tyrell will be the backup running back this year. I would expect him not to be um, too much involved until there is an injury, which I think it comes throughout an 18 game season. But what do you think about that, Blake? And how do you feel about their backup plan with Jordan Tyrell?
Yeah, I think that if they have to go to Jordan Tyrell, unfortunately, of course, William Stanback will be injured. But I don't think it'll be too much of a detriment for the BC Lions this year. We've seen in the last couple of years, of course, with Smoke Mizell and some of the backs they had before. James Butler was a really good back for the Lions, but they really weren't run heavy, is what I was trying to say. They were a lot more pass heavy. They ran when they had to run, sort of, but it was also to their detriment last year. We saw in that big October game against the Winnipeg Blue Bombers that they were unable to convert the third and short, and that kind of ultimately cost them the game. So I think and I hope that they'll be able to get William Stanback more involved and kind of go maybe 65-35, 60-40 running the ball this season.
Yeah, absolutely. So, before we are joined by Adrian, let's go back. Blake, what are you most excited about on the field this year for the BC Lions?
Yeah, I'm just excited about the season as a whole. Of course, hosting the Grey Cup comes with certain expectations, of course, from the fans, from the players themselves, from the management. I don't know if you really realize this, Cole, but other than the Hamilton Tiger Cats, the BC Lions have the second longest Grey Cup drought now that Montreal won last year. It's now been 13 years since the Lions have won a Grey Cup, and I think they're really ready to add what would be a seventh banner at BC Place.
So sorry, folks. What I was saying, Blake, after that, what I went through was, what do you think some of the strengths and weaknesses on the BC Lions this year is? Some of the strengths I said were the firepower at, I think, the skill position players with, in the secondary on defense, linebacker, and then kind of on offense, the receiver, running back position are there some of their strengths and some of the weaknesses I thought were maybe some of the depth around the roster. What do you think what comes to your mind, Blake?
Yeah, I think the strengths are definitely going to be our quarterback play with Vernon Adams. It's kind of been widely publicized that he went from unranked last season to third in TSN's top 50 players this year. And they were, but I think one of the weaknesses, as you kind of already stated, is if William Stanback were to get injured this year, they don't really have a proven backup back. So that might be a detriment to the Lions. Other than that, I'm not too worried about this Lions team as a whole.
Yeah, absolutely. So, what are some things, Blake, finally, that come to mind with the matchup versus the Toronto Argonauts?
Yeah, I think as you said, really don't play with your food. The Argonauts, there's going to be so much media talk about the game there and, the whole Chad Kelly situation, Cameron Dukes, can he live up to the expectation? I fully expect the Lions um, defense to kind of swallow Cameron Dukes whole. I personally don't think, I think he's a capable backup, but he's obviously nowhere near the level of Chad Kelly. And expect that the Lions offense will be able to put up just enough points to beat the Argos defense.
Okay, so, I believe Adrian's having some technical difficulties, if I'm not mistaken, folks. So he should be hopefully joining us shortly. But until then, Blake, I guess let's talk about expectations for Vernon Adams Jr. Obviously, yourself being a big fan, he's obviously been picked throughout last night's kind of TSN, kind of I guess their version of their kickoff coverage. Milt Stegall obviously picking it, the BC Lions to win the Grey Cup, and Vernon Adams to be MOP of the Grey Cup. So, what do you think is kind of fair expectations for VA, and what do you think this season he's capable of?
Yeah, I think Vernon Adams has as high expectations for himself as really anyone else, and he'll be the first one to tell you that. I expect him to really be the top quarterback in the CFL this year. No disrespect to Zach Claros or Chad Kelly or whoever else around the league, but Vernon showed last year how good of a quarterback he was. When he was out for those 2 games, you kind of saw how it affected the BC Lions, and I think he's the most important part to this team. I expect him to pass for over 5,000 yards, maybe 30 touchdowns, something like that. And I also expect him to cut down on that interception rate from a year ago. Not throwing 6 interceptions in Toronto will definitely help. Maybe 5 or 6, and we'll see what happens from there.
Something that I didn't love, Blake, that I hadn't actually mentioned quite yet is the stat that I saw of the BC Lions haven't won in Toronto since 2019, if I'm not mistaken, a long time. So, I honestly I didn't love it, but I think now that I'm seeing it in my head, the Lions are due a victory, and that's what gives me even much more confidence. Blake, before we get to our guest, who I believe will be joining us here shortly, Adrian Greene, starting safety for the BC Lions, did you give a shout out to your CFL fantasy league?
No, I didn't. So I will do that quickly. Our CFL Fantasy League, it's run, or all the proceeds, I should say, go to the CFL Fans Fight Cancer event that'll be held the day before Grey Cup this year. I don't quite have the place or the time just yet, but as soon as I do, I will tweet it out on both my personal account and our CFF Twitter page. But if anyone wants to get involved, it is a $50 buy-in, and we have weekly prizes. So I believe the winner of every week gets $20, and then there's also season prizes for first, second, and third. And all those proceeds go towards the CFL Fans Fight Cancer Initiative. And the league is run by a really good friend of mine, Laura Stewart, a Hamilton Tiger Cats fan. So she is, of course, from Hamilton. Her and her mom, Mo, they're great people. I hope they'll be making their way out to BC for the regular season game. And I know for sure they'll be making their way out for the Grey Cup in November.
Awesome, Blake. Hopefully, everyone's joining and can have some fun playing some fantasy football this season. For everybody that's tuning in, we got 37 here tuning in on Twitter, on YouTube here tonight, Blake. Anybody that's tuning in, please subscribe, share, retweet, all the good stuff. Blake and I greatly, greatly appreciate it. As well as, loyal contributors like, Shane Ryan, who will be joining us later. Mackenzie, obviously, who gives us, Mackenzie, obviously, shout out to him making our kind of our logo, making it come to life. Used to help us with thumbnails. Now kind of Shane's kind of in that department. So never a one man band here, folks. It takes a team. It takes a community to run something like this. So all of us here appreciate it. You guys tuning in and just excited to talk with you guys every Wednesday night. As you guys can see below, CFL Weekly. Blake and I will be here at 6 p.m. every Wednesday night to talk, CFL, U Sports, maybe a little CGFL, you name it. Blake and I will be doing it. Hopefully, from a CGFL perspective, if I will, Blake and I can maybe have a little bit more rivalry, if you will, I guess, maybe this year, a little bit more something to put on the line. The last few years, um, I haven't been confident enough to even bring up the conversation. So, I think the Raiders are cooking up something. I know Langley's bringing back somewhat of a veteran team. So, um, basically, what I'm saying, folks, if you're in Canada here tuning in tonight, go check out your local CGFL team, whether that's in the BCFC, the PFC, or the OFC. Blake, before we are joined here by our guest, any final thoughts? I guess.
No, I'm just super excited that the CFL season will kick off in less than 24 hours now with the Grey Cup rematch. There's no shortage of storylines in week one already, as we'll get to later in the show, but it's definitely fun. It kind of sucks that as Lions fans, we have to wait till the last game of the week to be able to see our BC Lions play, but you know what they say, distance makes the heart grow fonder. So, you know what? I'm okay with waiting a couple extra days.
I thought you were gonna say they saved the best for last, but I agree with that sentiment, I guess, too, Blake. But um, I guess before we get into it, stay tuned, folks. We will be joined by Shane Ryan. Could be now that Adrian's running a little bit behind. Could be a little bit after 7, maybe more like 7:10, something like that. So stay tuned. We will be making our picks of the week. As you can see down below, that's Montreal at Winnipeg, Hamilton at Calgary, Saskatchewan at Edmonton, and our BC Lions at the Toronto Argonauts. Blake, I'm just going to ask you, I guess, what's your most exciting matchup you're looking forward to outside of our BC Lions plan this week?
I'm actually looking forward to this. Might be a surprise for the people that tuned into our show last week when we did our prediction show and our standings prediction. but I'm actually really looking forward to that Hamilton Calgary game. And the reason why I'm looking so forward to it, Cole, is because I completely forgot it's the first time that Bo Levi Mitchell is returning to Calgary, as after last season, with the schedule quirks and the way it was, the only game the Stamps and Tiger Cats played was in Hamilton. So in the 2 years since he left in free agency, he has not made his way back to Hamilton, or to Calgary, I should say, yet, as a member of the Hamilton Tiger Cats. So it'll be really interesting to see the reception that the Stamps faithful give him at McMahon on Friday night.
Yes, that's what I have all eyes on as well. The reaction that he gets from the crowd. I expect it to be a positive one, I would think. Uh, should be maybe a little hard feelings, but not too many to disrespect a future Hall of Famer like that. So, Blake, let's get into it. Let's bring in our special guest of the episode, former St. Mary's Husky alum, and now current BC Lions starting safety, Adrian Greene, joining the program. Adrian, thanks for joining us. How you doing?
I'm good. How y'all doing? Thank y'all for having me.
Oh
Good,
man,
good.
we're doing great. We're doing great. We're excited to talk about the football season, as I'm sure you are excited to play. So it's been a long off season, and we're finally here. How excited are you to play a game on Sunday, especially with it being kind of in your backyard there in Toronto?
Honestly, it's exciting. Everyone's been working hard this off season, all through camp and everything, and like this is the moment that kind of everyone's been waiting for, right? Just get the season started and whatnot. Better way to start for me personally, in Toronto.
Yeah, and Adrian, you had your university career at St. Mary's. You're of course a member of our BC Lions right now, but I wanted to ask you quickly. The AUS is kind of the fourth conference, if you will, when it comes to the national stage, and I don't mean any disrespect in that. It's
Hmm.
you guys have some really good players come out of that conference. It just seems that when you guys play the OUA or the Canada West or the RE or the RSEQ, sometimes maybe you guys seem a little bit overmatched, if you will. What do you think has to change for the AUS to change that?
Uh, that's a tough one, honestly. I don't know what the answer is, to be honest with you. You know what I mean? I think me personally, with the team I had, we weren't fortunate enough my first two seasons to make it out of the conference, but our conference record was 8-0 the first year, and then we had some issues in the game canceled, which turned to 7-1. But we were essentially 7-1 for my first two seasons there, and that was honestly probably two of the best teams I played on when I was in my time at St. Mary's. So it would have been definitely interesting to see how we would have matched up versus an OUA team. But to answer that question exactly, it's hard to pinpoint. I feel like there's a lot of things that go into winning football games, and winning football games isn't easy to do. So that'd be an interesting topic to look into as well. But I don't have the exact answer for that for you.
But as Blake mentioned, a lot of ballers obviously coming out of the AUS. Some of your teammates on the BC Lions, I believe, coming from a few schools. So shifting back to you, Adrian, what are your expectations going into this year? Obviously, we've heard a few things of, defense coordinator Ryan Phillips kind of talking highly of you. But fans like to, I feel like, put all these expectations. But I think people forget that no one other than yourself has higher expectations for yourself. So, what are your expectations, and how excited are you for your first year as a full time starter?
I'm excited for it, honestly. And in terms of expectations, I just want to play dominant football. I don't want to try and stress too many and do too much number chasing. I feel like, if I play my game and play the style of football I'm accustomed to, and just use the guys around me, then when you do your job well, the pieces kind of fall into the place, and when you make the plays you're supposed to make, ultimately the numbers will end up being good at the end of the season. So the main thing for me, honestly, is focus for me is just execution and just playing dominant football.
Yeah, and Adrian, I wanted to ask you quickly. It can be a coach, it can be a former teammate, maybe even a current teammate. Who's the most influential person in your life that's had the most impact on your career so far?
I can't tip my hat to one specific person. I feel like there's a lot of people, honestly, that have contributed to the success I've had so far. But just to throw a couple names out there, one of my trainers back home, he's been working with me since I was in high school, and every offseason I get with him. His name's Troy Adams. He played pro for a little bit as well. But tip my hat to him. My college coach that recruited me, James Colsey III. He had a big influence on my development as a player through college. And then like my current teammates and coaches as well, like Ryan, Coach RP. Everyone knows how RP played when he was playing. His resume speaks for itself. So being able to sit in the room with him and learn from him, and guys like TJ Lee, Gary Peters, Marcus Sales is on SAS now, but guys like him as well, have very much contributed to me, and honestly, even a lot of the younger guys on the team, just that constant competition and push to always want to get better and everything, like guys like Manny Rugamba, Patrice Rene, like those guys like that as well, always push you to be better too.
So obviously, Adrian, you're a Canadian yourself. Um, would love to hear kind of your perspective. The Canadian talent on the roster, I feel like is top tier in the CFL. So especially in your, I believe your kind of your position room there with guys like Patrice Rene. Obviously, we saw Christophe Beaulieu drafted this year, and we've heard good things out of him. So can you just speak about being a Canadian and like proving that no matter whether you have a national or an American status, that you can play anywhere. Especially that I believe you've kind of been shifted around here in training camp. Not specifically just playing safety. I believe you've been kind of moved around playing a little bit of corner as well.
For sure.
We've seen guys like Terrell Ford in Winnipeg. I believe he'll be starting at that outside corner position tomorrow for the Winnipeg. So just kind of breaking the mold of sometimes we see Canadians in the secondary just be safeties, but a lot of you guys now can play anywhere in the secondary and are trying to prove that. So can you speak about that and kind of the talent in I guess in BC?
Uh, Definitely, and it's exactly what you said. Is breaking that mold, right? I think the main thing is if you have that ability to be versatile, then it's ultimately up to you to break out of that mold and showcase that, right? So the main thing for me, honestly, and I think for the other Canadians, speaking for my room specifically, you know, nobody kind of views themselves as a Canadian or American. We're just DBs on the field, and you know, if you have the ability to play multiple spots, or if you have the ability to excel at one spot, I mean, ultimately, like you got to look at yourself as you want to be the best DB on the field versus I want to be the best Canadian versus American. And I think that's kind of the mindset that the guys in the room have, and I think honestly, it brings out the best in them, and it allows them to showcase what they can do.
Yeah, and Adrian, you're of course on the defensive side of the ball. So in practice, you have to go against some of the best receivers, at least in my opinion, in the CFL. Guys like Alex Hollins, a new guy in Travis Fulgham, Keon Hatcher when he's of course healthy, and stuff like that. But on opposition teams, who's maybe someone that is your favorite to go up against?
My favorite to go up against, honestly, I feel like a lot of teams have a lot of great receivers. One guy I do know personally, Keon Julian Grant on Montreal. I know him personally, so it's always fun to play against somebody that you know. And I went to high school with him, and I played against him in the AUS in college as well. So he's a familiar face for me. We're from the same place, but I think that's like to put my name on one specific person. I think that's the guy that he's a great player, and I like to play against him. But ultimately, like that, honestly, every team has their batch of guys that they go to. So it's exciting to be lined up in front of a number one and number two, whoever. Honestly, a main receiver for the other team.
So the reaction, obviously, of the home opener was a pretty big one. Um, and now, obviously, you guys are focused on handling business on the field, everything like that. But a lot of cool things happening in BC this year, right? Now, speaking for myself, being on Vancouver Island this year, you guys are coming over here to play a football game. Obviously, I know you guys are focused on one game at a time and everything like that. But obviously, Grey Cup is being hosted in Vancouver. Can you talk about just the excitement that's been building in BC? You guys, we've had a good team now in BC the last few years, I
Mhm.
feel like it's kind of building to this year and building to hopefully a special day in November here in BC.
No, it's exciting. I think everyone's really excited about the culture that's being built with the team, and us as players, it means so much to us just being able to have the stadium get that full and have that many people want to come out. I mean, obviously, 50 Cent helps with that a little bit, but I mean, what not better day for that? You know what I mean? Than the home opener to have that many seats sold out, right? So I think just that honestly just the constant culture building with our team and around the community and just having as many people out as much as possible whenever we do have them home games and everything, just even when we are having the away games, just having the support that we see on social media, online, and everything. I think it's great for the team.
Yeah, and Adrian, the athlete in me, I always like to hear about other athletes, quirks and stuff like that. Number choices, all that kind of stuff. You, of course, wear number 23, the same number as Michael Jordan famously wore. Is that some part of the reason you wear it, or is it something else?
um Honestly, I had 39 my first year, and that was a terrible, like that was an ugly number. I'll be honest with that. So, when my first year finished up, I got it in camp, and a few numbers were available. But I said, you know what? I got given this number. I'm gonna rock with it for the first year, and then at the end of that year, I was just looking at the numbers that were available, and like you said, Jordan's definitely a player that I've watched and admired in his attitude towards the game, and I said, I haven't worn 23 before, but I said, hey, I'm gonna throw it on, see if it looks good.
So, Adrian, obviously you're entering into year three. Um, Outside of BC, maybe a little bit more of a quieter name, right? Um, I think a lot of BC Lions fans are excited, but for those that are listening, obviously not everyone's a Lions fan tuning in tonight. What can you tell people that maybe across the league why they should tune in? Specifically watch you, and what can they expect from a player like Adrian Greene this season?
Um, Honestly, they could expect a guy that is gonna go hard. They expect a guy that's gonna go make a lot of plays. I'm a younger guy on the team, but I really embrace this role that I've earned, and I'm gonna run with it. And I think the BC Lions, us as a whole organization, everyone's building. Offense, defense, special teams, head office, the stuff outside in the community. Like I think all the pieces are starting to come together and we're building something special here for sure. So it'd be exciting to tune in. It's going to be great football from everyone across the board. So I'm excited to see what goes on.
It is. So, Adrian, my last question. Obviously, here at Canadian Football Fanatics, we love to cover the CFL, but we also cover U Sports. Going to be kind of a little bit more Canada West dominant, but from your perspective, coming from the AUS, can you tell the folks tuning in here tonight that why they should tune in on Saturdays? I think for a lot of years, even myself, kind of neglecting the U Sports CIS kind of product and finally being able to tune in and kind of appreciate it the last few years here, being able to go get out to UBC, actually taking games live. Why should people that are, Canadian football fans consume that as well? Because it's coming up here soon, and I think it's a great product. And I think all four conferences have really good kind of quality players and good, like I mentioned, product on the field.
No, definitely. I think sometimes the U Sports League gets overlooked, but like you said, there's guys that always come out of U Sports and end up playing in the CFL and having good careers. You know what I mean? Some of them having even great careers. So I think the more they watch it, the more they'll start to see that talent. You know what I mean? The more it gets paid attention to. But at the end of the day, like there's gonna be guys that are balling everywhere. So it's something that you wanna, as a Canadian football fan, as Canadian football, you should check it out for sure. I'd say.
And it's the future generation of the CFL, hopefully. I look for a
Exactly.
lot of those guys. So, Blake, any final words for Adrian before we get him out of here? Obviously, busy on a game week.
No, just quickly, I don't know if you even know this, Adrian, or if you remember, I should say, but back at that crazy Ottawa game last year, that comeback game at home, you actually took a picture with me after the game. We were kind of posing, and we were in the corner of the end zone there. So that's still on my phone, and I look at it every once in a while. So
Oh, do you?
I,
I
I
didn't even
just
go ahead.
yeah, I just wanted to say that. uh, during the winter, whatever, during the long winter months, I kind of looked at that to be like, man, before I know it, BC Lions football is going to be back.
Yeah, that's exciting for sure. I didn't even remember that, but I'm glad I could leave a mark somewhere.
Awesome, Adrian. Thank you so much for joining the show, and hopefully we'll catch you maybe later this season or after the season. We'll get you on the podcast for a longer episode. So
For sure.
thanks for tuning in, buddy, and good luck on Sunday, and we'll see you at the home opener.
Thanks,
Absolutely. Thank
Adrian.
thank y'all for having me. Go Lions.
Go Lions. All right, folks, that was BC Lions starting safety, Adrian Greene. I guess I shouldn't uh, pigeonhole him. He could be BC Lions starting cornerback potentially. I believe it's been kept pretty quietly who's going to be starting here on Sunday. So, going to be interesting. But, Blake, what were your thoughts on the Adrian Greene interview?
Yeah, I thought Adrian Greene was very well spoken. I know it was a bit of a tough question that I asked him about the AUS. I was kind of expecting that, but I thought the answer he gave was very intellectual. And as I said to Adrian, I meant no disrespect to the AUS or, of course, players like himself that play in that conference. It just seems to me that whenever they get to the Loney Bowl or the I'm forgetting the other Canadian semifinal,
Mitchell Bowl.
the Mitchell Bowl. That's correct. That they always seem to be kind of overmatched against the other conferences. But it's been pretty clear that it's good football. I mean, you watch it on Saturdays in conference. Some of the games are really close and stuff like that. And it's just interesting to see. I hope myself that eventually the AUS will be able to get back to the Vanier Cup and bring a Vanier Cup to Atlantic Canada.
Hopefully, I think there's a big market out there for Canadian football. So, before we get into our next segment here on the show here tonight, folks, if you guys enjoyed the Adrian Greene interview, if you guys enjoyed the BC Lions versus Toronto Argonauts preview, please like, comment, subscribe, follow, rate, review, whatever you guys are tuning in here to the show tonight. Please support the channel, support the Twitter page. All that good stuff is super appreciated. Blake, I think it's time to get into our picks of the week. And we're going to bring in special guest Shane Ryan of 13th Man Sports. Shane, thanks for joining us. How you doing, buddy?
Not bad. How are you guys?
We're
Shane,
doing pretty good. We're excited to talk some football. We're excited to get into our picks. Looks like you're a busy man just getting off work. How was the shift, brother?
Well, it was fine. Went by a little bit slower than I would have liked. I'm glad to be on the show and talking some football with you guys.
Uh, Blake, go ahead,
yeah.
buddy.
Yeah, no, I was just gonna say the same thing. It looks like you might be walking to the bus stop or something like that, Shane. But glad
Yeah.
to have you on.
Yeah, I'm glad to be on, guys. It's always fun to talk some football, um, and especially it's game week, so plenty to talk about.
Well,
There
for
is.
8 teams, not for your Ottawa Red Blacks, but
Hey, you know what? I am a CFL fan. I will say it's the benefit of not growing up for the most part without a team in Ottawa. I got to enjoy the league as a league, and I didn't have to pick a favorite team right away. I got to just watch great football.
Great
yes,
perspective.
that's for sure. That's for sure.
So, Shane joined us here on the channel before, but for those that are familiar or aren't familiar and maybe first time listeners here to the show tonight, can you tell the listeners kind of what you got going on with 13th Man Sports and kind of, I guess, we'll kind of segue to, I guess, what you got going on with Bet99 as well?
Yeah, I mean, if you guys haven't seen or heard of 13th Man Sports, we're a local, small sports outlet. We have you guys, obviously. We have Jackie, who does kind of some prairie sports, the Western Hockey League. He also will be doing some Blue Bomber stuff. We also have some writers who cover the CBL, myself included. We have Jordan, who does the Shooting Stars. I do the Blackjacks, who got their first W of the season against Montreal, which is fantastic. Um, we also have a CPL Soccer Canada podcast. It's FC13. They've been a little bit on a hiatus due to some hosting, trying to find a new host because some of them had to step away due to personal commitments. But they should be back up and running within the next week or so. So you can catch them on Twitter, on Instagram at FC13. And yeah, and I mean, we're going to do a little bit of hockey. come next season, hopefully some National League lacrosse, and as well some youth sports and obviously CFL stuff.
Awesome. So, as well, Shane is partnered with his 13th Man Sports with Bet99, and if able to, Shane will be coming on the show here. I know his schedule is going to be busy, but hopefully every week, maybe every other week, and kind of previewing the matchups for the week, giving us the lines, and pretty much presenting who we should be picking. Maybe not, could be disagreeing. But Shane, tell us what you got going on with Bet99.
Yeah, I mean, Bet99 and 13th Man have now officially announced the partnership with each other. So any betting, anything betting related will be powered and sponsored by Bet99. If you're in Ontario, um, it is Bet99 Ontario.
Is this fair juice?
And you can go through
Is this
our
fair
link
juice?
tree and
Dad.
click the Bet99 app link there to get more information. But yeah, they're just gonna help us with some specialty. Gotta be very careful with my words here. They're just gonna provide some of the game day lines and some of the this year's betting lines for us. But I mean, yeah, outside of that, I think it's another tool in our back pocket to utilize going forward with the CFL season and into the fall sports like NHL, NFL, NBA. So just another tool in our pocket.
Throughout the week, folks, if you guys are using Bet99, feel free to tag, 13th Man Sports at _ CFF Fanatics. Let us know how you're betting and hopefully how you're winning, because hopefully we're going to be doing some winning here ourselves throughout the CFL season. No guarantees, so stay with it. Or what is that play now? Is little catchphrase? Know your limit, play within it, I believe.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
know your limit, play
don't go.
within it.
Don't go too crazy. We're not condoning, going homeless. Let's say, but have some fun and kind of let us know how you're doing it. With me and Blake and Shane will let you guys know on the social medias how we're doing every week, and you guys will see here on the show how we're picking with some of the lines with Bet99 and stuff like that throughout the week. So, without further ado, I'm not too sure, Shane, if you have some of the lines or not handy, or if Blake does, but. Let's start with week's one matchup, which is tomorrow. And we have, oddly enough, Montreal, the Grey Cup champions, on the road. Obviously, as Blake mentioned a little bit earlier, with the stadium renovations and whatnot, I guess they couldn't host, which is kind of odd for the defending champs. But on the road in Winnipeg tomorrow, how are you guys feeling about the matchup? I guess I'll go for Blake first.
Yeah, I'm glad you let me go first because I wanted Shane to hear this too. But I'll admit I was looking at some of the lines yesterday on Bet99, and it really blew me away that the Alouettes were 6.5 point underdogs there. So of course, with those of you that are unfamiliar with betting, that's plus 6.5. They're the defending Grey Cup champions, and I know what happened last year, and they weren't supposed to win that game. But the fact of the matter is, they did, and I know they're going into Winnipeg as well. But they beat Winnipeg in the Grey Cup game last year, and giving them a touchdown. So what that also means is they could lose by less than 6 points. And if you bet on the plus 6.5, you win. So I think I'm definitely going to put some money down on that, Shane.
Yeah, I mean, I think what needs to be, yeah, they won the Grey Cup, which, again, at the end of the day, that's all that matters. They won the championship. No, not trying to discredit them, but they were 0-2 against Winnipeg last season. It's not shocking that they're 6.5 point underdogs going into the first game. I think 6.5 is actually quite generous for Montreal. I think the big shocker is the fact that they're plus 270 on the money line.
Mm-hmm.
They are like, which is wild. The spread is fine. Like I think Ottawa or the Elks are 6.5 as well. So like again, spread isn't the biggest area of shock. You rarely see, because of the Rouge you rarely see those like 3.5, 1.5, 2.5 spreads that you might see a lot in the NFL. Um, but I think the shocker is the fact that they're plus 270. They're not like plus 110 or 115. Like being a plus 270 underdog that's a significant um, win if you put money down on the outlets.
Okay, so before we give our picks of this game, I'm gonna send it back around to you guys, and I'm curious, what are you excited for most in this matchup? I'll start, and I'll go with, um, I think it's safe to say we kind of know what to expect from Winnipeg. I think offensively they should be, pretty much business as usual, pretty close to last year. Obviously on defense, some more question marks. Obviously, losing a shutdown corner like Demari Houston, but I think Tyrell Ford should hopefully kind of be a guy that can hopefully uh, add some stability to the secondary once again. I think for me, defensively, the thing that would be questioned for the Bombers would kind of be that other guy outside of Willie Jefferson. Obviously, they're high on that. I believe it's number 45, Haba. But for me, knowing what to expect from Winnipeg, I don't know what to expect from Montreal personally. I don't know whether to expect them to be fueled by a lot of this confidence coming from off a Grey Cup victory, or maybe they have a little bit of a Grey Cup hangover because of they weren't the greatest team last year, right? Obviously, they got hot at the right time, won a lot of games down the stretch, get into the playoffs and win a lot of games with confidence. Um, can be obviously can pay off, and it's no undermining them. But I'm just curious because I think there is some question marks. Obviously, Cody Fajardo is somewhat, maybe proven now. Kind of a monkey has been lifted in some way off his back, but I feel like in some ways too, Cody Fajardo really didn't prove much um, individually last year as a quarterback. So curious to see from Montreal's perspective, kind of what team they roll out there tomorrow. But I guess I'll go to Shane first. What are you excited for most in this matchup?
Yeah, I mean, losing Jackson Jeffcoat is going to be an interesting how they replace Jackson Jeffcoat and Demarius Houston is going to be an interesting storyline, especially early in the season. But for Montreal, there's question marks along like anywhere on that team outside of the defense. Sankey and Lemon, that defense should still be really good, and that was a big reason why they won the Grey Cup. They kept that team in it, gave the offense a chance to win it. Which, if you're going to win a championship, that's exactly what you need. But I think the big question mark is around Cody Fajardo. I think if you look at his history, you look at his situations previously, especially how his tenure in Saskatchewan kind of came to an end. The question mark is, can he be a consistent top 3, top 4 quarterback in the league? There's argument that he wasn't that last year. So he has a lot to prove. And I think, yeah, you can say that, like, okay, cool, he won the Grey Cup. He has that under his belt. You can never take that from him. But there's a lot of guys who win championships after a good run and then are out of the league within 2 to 3 years. So for Cody, he needs to come out. He needs to be confident. He needs to be able to accurately throw the ball downfield. And you know what? If they win, it's a great start. And I don't think a loss is going to determine the rest of his season because I don't think one win, one loss will determine the outcome. But if they come off to a loss and he has under, I'd say, 250 yards passing, and they don't score more than 14 offensive points, there are going to be question marks heading into week 2 about Cody's ability to play. And if, there was that Grey Cup hangover, that's going to be an excuse. But there's more question marks, in my opinion, on Cody than anywhere else on the field.
Blake, and I'll go to you last before we give our picks here. What are you most excited about when it comes to the Winnipeg Montreal matchup?
Yeah, I'm just excited to see if Montreal can do it again. Really is. I kind of already mentioned it. They were big underdogs in the Grey Cup last year. They fell behind early, and then they were able to come back at the end there. They have to go into a hostile environment at what is now Princess Auto Field. Those Bomber fans are going to be really angry because they were expecting a third Grey Cup in 4 years and, kind of that dynasty talk. So can the Alouettes weather what is most likely going to be an early storm? Like if they're down, 7-3, maybe even 10-0 at the end of the first quarter, are they okay with that? And can they park it for the rest of the game and try and come back and win?
So I'll start, I guess. I believe, as mentioned, Montreal is getting 6.5 points. If that is correct, I'm still gonna go with the Winnipeg Blue Bombers to win, and I will go to Shane next. Shane, who are you picking and why?
So I'm taking Winnipeg, but like I would hit Winnipeg on the money line, but I'm taking Montreal on the spread. I don't necessarily think it's going to be a 7 point difference. I could easily think this game could come down to a last minute field goal. Um, so I would hit Montreal on the spread and then hit Winnipeg on the money line. Um, so for me, it's Winnipeg. I think they have the better offense. I think their defensive line will still compete and outperform Montreal's offensive line. They don't have Stanback, and I think Stanback was a big part of how they were able to weather the storm offensively for a little bit in the Grey Cup. So that's my pick. I take Winnipeg, but I'm going to hit Montreal on the money line.
Yeah, and I completely agree with Shane there. I pick Winnipeg to win the game, but I would definitely hit Montreal on the money line. As I said earlier, I think the touchdown is just too much for the Bombers to cover. I think it'll be a really close game, but the Bombers get a bit of revenge and do win the season opener.
Let's get to game number two and Friday Night Football. I can hear the theme music already. And we have I don't even know if I can oversell this one, but we have, I guess I shouldn't say that this early in the season because for who knows, Calgary and Hamilton for somehow could be decent this year, but I don't think that's going to happen. So we have, I believe, Bo Levi Mitchell's return to McMahon Stadium Friday night. And personally, just being honest, I don't know where to pick right away. I hate that this is kind of the kind of fill game that I come home from work Friday. I'm going to be all excited to get into the weekend, and I get Calgary Hamilton on Friday night. Um, I'm curious, I guess, how you guys feel about this matchup, and I guess I'll go to Shane first because he's somewhat kind of, I guess, in the Hamilton market, if kind of you will. He can have a little bit more of a pulse on Hamilton's market. What are you excited about when it comes to this matchup, if there is anything exciting for you, Shane?
I mean, this is going to be the biggest storyline of Week 1. There's no underselling it. There's no overselling. It's Bo Levi's return to Calgary since moving to Hamilton. He wasn't there last year. He'll return. He'll get his first start. And honestly, I think this game will be a lot more exciting than people think. Bo Levi has a lot to prove. And I mean, if preseason is any indication, he looked like Bo Levi Mitchell against Ottawa in his first preseason game. There's a couple of drops that, if they were completed, there's probably a different outcome heading out of his first quarter play in the preseason. So for me, I think this game will be a lot more exciting. There's a lot for both teams to prove. You have two coaching staffs who have a lot to prove, and players on both sides of the ball that they know last year wasn't the expectation of what they wanted. They know this year, I mean, the CFL, I believe, had them 9th and 8th in the power rankings. I think Calgary was 9th, Hamilton was 8th, and then Ottawa was 7th, and Edmonton was 6th. So if those two teams aren't looking at Ottawa and Edmonton being like, hey, those two teams finished first and second last, and we're somehow behind them, those two teams have a lot to prove Week 1. So I think this is going to be a close game. The spread is only half a point. I think Hamilton is plus 110 underdogs. They're going into this game. So I personally have Hamilton winning this purely because of the Bo Levi factor. I think he's going to go in there. He's going to go determined. He's going to probably put up the best game he has in a Hamilton uniform and is going to lead the Ticats to a 1-0 start. which will get everyone all up in arms and get them overconfident about Bo Levi being an MLP candidate after 1 week.
Blake?
Yeah, yeah. No, I was just gonna say. Originally, I think in my pick'em on CFL Fan Zone, a shameless plug for them. But on my pick'em there, I believe I picked the Stamps. But after listening to Shane talk, I might change my pick. It's no secret. I think I picked these teams last in their respective division this year on last week's episode. I still believe that. I don't believe that Hamilton will be that good. They might be improved, but I don't think they're going to be that good. And I just have no faith in Jake Mayer whatsoever. So, you know what? After all that, I think I've talked myself into picking Hamilton on Friday night.
Okay, so we have two Hamiltons. And Shane definitely makes some good points that, Hamilton could be maybe a little bit better. That both teams could be a little bit better than expected. But personally, I think this just comes down to the quarterback position. I think I like kind of what Brian said. I just don't believe in both quarterbacks kind of long term. I think Jake Mayer is kind of as I kind of mentioned, and people will see on my power rankings. I think kind of the book is out on Jake Mayer. He doesn't like to push the ball downfield. Likes to go to his first read, which is great. When that's not more than 5-6 yards downfield, putting yourself in second and manageable situations and not coming through. I think time and time again we saw that from the Calgary Stampeders last year. Obviously, they do make the playoffs. Worst record in I believe maybe 16 years. I believe 2007 was the last time they were seven wins or less. I think they had 6 in 12 last season. So just super not high, and I expect them to kind of take a step back before they can go forward. So just overly not high on Calgary. Hamilton, I just think they kind of they didn't extend Taylor Powell for no reason. I think I believe it was Troy Durrell from Eaton and Raw was kind of talking with the 2-0 guys that about a leash possibly on Bo Levi Mitchell, and him seeing it that maybe even by week 4, a month into the season, that Bo Levi Mitchell could be pulled. So I just don't think I don't believe too much. Obviously, depending on what fan base you are or what player you're maybe talking about, sometimes preseason can kind of be brought up and kind of be maybe a positive thing to build on. But I just don't think seeing Bo Levi Mitchell play a good preseason game is anything to kind of hang your hat on after what we've seen since maybe 2019. Has Bo looked anywhere near kind of what we saw from that stretch of maybe 4 or 5, 6 years of elite level play? I think Bo's a Hall of Famer. I don't mean any disrespect. I just think it's kind of his time to kind of ride off into the sunset, if you will. So for the sake, I guess, long-winded of getting to a pick here, I'm going to be different just for the sake of Blake and I's season betting here. And I'm going to take the Calgary Stampeders and hope for a little bit of, as I believe Shane mentioned, only half a point separates these two teams. So not an upset, but I'm going to take the Calgary Stampeders at home, actually, to pull this one off. I think Bo's for sure going to be fired up to play in Calgary. I just don't think we saw a lot of those games last year from Bo and Hamilton, and him being excited to come back and play. And we saw a lot of interceptions thrown, a lot of overthrown balls, a lot of punts, as Brian mentioned, from that Hamilton Tiger Cats offense when he was on the field. So don't expect too much from that offense. Calgary, I think, hopefully, and we've kind of seen it. Why Jake Mayer has been somewhat successful over this last year and a half. They like to lean on the run game. I think Kadeem Carey obviously leans down, but Peyton Logan, Dietrich Mills, I think will be leaned on to be kind of split in time. And I think Dietrich Mills is probably on the upward trajectory, if that's what you maybe want to call it. And I think with Peyton Logan, if they're able to run the ball a little bit, I think Jake Mayer is able to do what he does, game manage the game. They get a late field goal late, and hopefully are able to make me right, and I'm able to go up 1-0 on Blake. But I'll go with Calgary. You boys can take Hamilton. Any final thoughts? Is there anything that comes to mind betting wise for this game, Shane?
No, not really. Unfortunately, a lot of betting sites don't post like player props until the day of, so there's no player props available. But I would hit the under. It's over under at 45.5. So personally, I would take Hamilton on the spread at plus 0.05, and then take them on the under. This game doesn't move the needle enough. Like they're plus 110 on the money line. You could hit them there and hit all three if you want. But I would take the under at 45.5. I just don't see both teams putting up like 22 putting up 22.5 or 23 points in this game as of right now. So I'm taking the under easily. Take the under on this one. If I'm wrong, I'm wrong. But based off last season and how these offenses performed, take the under.
Take the unders, right, folks. But getting into Saturday, we have a matchup. I'm kind of excited actually to see. I'm a little bit more of a, I guess I hate to say it, like Edmonton fan, or I guess maybe Edmonton like believer,
Supporter?
I guess if you will. Yeah, supporter, I guess is if you will. But it's embarrassing because I guess Shane, you weren't. I don't believe we were. I don't believe we had a connection last season. I actually picked the Edmonton Elks to finish third last year, and yeah, that reaction says it all. So,
Yikes.
um, uh, I've been a little bit, I guess, I can't even say higher on the Edmonton Elks because they haven't delivered, but like you mentioned, Edmonton supporter. So I'm looking forward to this one just to see how McLeod Bethel Thompson looks. Obviously, last time we seen him in the CFL, he got obviously the respect of. Speaking of the CFL's top 40, I believe he was at 45, if I'm not mistaken. So even after taking the year off, he appears in the top 50. I'm curious to see what can MBT do for the Edmonton Elks. Obviously, they have to kind of put it, I guess, a little bit lightly, a below average offensive line. I'm curious to see um, if he can kind of help that out with some of his quick game, getting the ball out of his hands. I think Kevin Brown's another guy that's on an upward trajectory. So Blake, I'll go to you first. What are your first thoughts on the Edmonton Elks and the Saskatchewan Roughriders on Saturday?
Yeah, I'm actually really looking forward to this game. All that I'm hearing out of Edmonton Elks camp, and I hear it a lot because I listen pretty frequently to the Turf District podcast and stuff like that. But it's been all positive, and I think that McLeod Bethel Thompson, I wasn't a fan of the signing when it first happened. I thought it was a huge slap in the face to Trey Ford. He came in and he kind of saved the season, if you will. At least that was my opinion. But if you look at the numbers, he really didn't. After he came as the starter, the Elks were only 4-5. They finished the year 4-14. So that's of course not good enough for the Edmonton Elks. We talked to our friend Sheldon a couple weeks ago. He's really excited about the Riders as well, and Corey Mason, how that team's gonna look. But Trevor Harris is a huge question mark for the Saskatchewan Roughriders. He's now 39 years old. He's coming off a major leg injury last season. How long is he going to stay healthy? They just got rid of Mason Fine, but is Shea Patterson the answer at quarterback? I don't think so. So I'm going to start us off here, and I'm going to pick the Elks. Don't turn us off just yet, Brian. But I'm going to pick the Elks to win this game and start the year on the right foot, 1-0.
Shane, I'll go to you, buddy. What are you thinking when it comes to Sask and Edmonton?
So I don't disagree with Blake about Edmonton winning. Um, I agree that Trevor Harris is a huge question mark. I think Shea Patterson is dude can be a great CFL quarterback. He just has all the tangibles. He's worked his way up to be QB2. Um, so I feel confident that if Trevor Harris falters or gets hurt, that he could slot into that QB1 spot and be um, an effective quarterback for them. However, I think the big question marks is how much they're going to run the ball. They have AJ Ouellette, arguably the best running back in the CFL. Mister can do it all and dominate. Like if there's a running back that can put up a 2,000-yard total yards, like 1,000-yard rushing and 1,000-yard passing, it's AJ Ouellette this year. He is going to be given the ball. He will be one of the most touched players. And I mean, that sounds kind of bad, but like he will get the most touches almost of any team, of any player. and maybe it's a little early to spoil it, but he is my favorite to win MOP. He is plus 1,800 right now on Bet99 to win MOP, and I think you just have to slam it because this man will do anything and everything for the Rough Riders this year. I agree that I didn't agree with the Bethel Thompson signing. I'm not the biggest Bethel Thompson fan. I think he leads a lot to be desired. But you look at the quarterback rooms that Trey Ford has been in, and there is no way that you look at them and be like, oh yeah, he is an upgrade. He isn't an upgrade to what he's dealt with. Trey Ford's a young quarterback. He's been in the league. I think this is his third year. And his quarterback room has featured Doge and Cornelius. No offense to those two guys. Not the most experienced, not the best quarterback room to ever have. So like any quarterback, you look at Drew Brown, you look at Zach Caleros, you look at Trevor Harris, you look at Bo Levi, you look at you look at Travis Lule, you look at Michael O'Reilly, you look at Cody Fajardo. They were all QB2, QB3 behind solid veteran quarterbacks. They all got time to learn and process and develop in the CFL game before being put into a starting role. So I think this benefits Ford in the long run. And I agree. Edmonton will win. They're plus 110. The spread is only 1.5. The over-under on total is 46.5. But the one thing I'm going to do on the futures, hit the over on Edmonton total wins. Their over is 6.5. Their total is 6.5 right now. Take the over on that. They're going to finish third in the division. I just think they're that much better overall than Saskatchewan and Calgary, but they're not quite to BC and Winnipeg status yet. Take the over on there. Take Edmonton this week. They will be a surprising team this year. I have them at like 10 and 8 finishing the year.
Quickly, boys, I am excited that they did move the game time because it should be a good Saturday with game one of the Stanley Cup Finals after this one, or kind of, I would imagine, kind of starting in the maybe late or the fourth quarter there. But when it comes to this matchup, for me, as I mentioned, I've been high on the Elks since last season. Mostly, I guess, due to kind of my confidence in, I think, Trey Ford. Now, obviously, as you guys just both mentioned, Blake kind of mentioned the little bit of disrespect because he thought kind of, Trey being a little bit of the difference maker. Obviously, when you peel back the curtain a little bit, that's not obviously 100% true. Obviously, he was super exciting, electrifying, all that good stuff. But I think Shane's probably maybe the first person that's talked me into like the idea of McLeod Bethel Thompson kind of being okay, like me being okay with kind of Trey Ford waiting in the wings for a little bit. I just think obviously those are like great examples. Obviously, there's no other great example than Tom Brady, Patrick Mahomes in the NFL. But I just think also the best way of learning is on the field, right, with live bullets. Once you get into a season, it's great to like interact with MBT in the field room and stuff like that. But like speaking from like a small, super smaller scale perspective, as like a backup quarterback, you get like a very little amount of team reps in like a team atmosphere when it's like actually 12 on 12. Sure, you get a lot of like 1v1 reps or excuse me, 1-on-1 reps and pass skelly reps and stuff like that. But like when it comes to 12 on 12 reps, you really don't get a lot of that throughout the season because it goes to the starter. So that being said, like I mentioned, Shane kind of talked me a little bit into it. And just with McLeod Bethel Thompson, I'm not the biggest fan of him either, but I think him getting the ball out of his hands so quickly will benefit the Elks. First and foremost, their offensive line, I think, just because of them being below average, like I mentioned, right? I think I believe that I don't know if they were as bad as Ottawa's. I think Ottawa had 71, if I'm not mistaken, last year, giving up sacks. But Edmonton, not much better, right? So I think McLeod Bethel Thompson's ability to kind of process the field, understand where maybe his first read is open a little bit quicker than Trey Ford will benefit the Elks. A guy like Kevin Brown will help as well. So I'm going to take the Elks personally too. I think Sass is going to be a tough out in the West. I think like you mentioned, Shane, a guy like Adrian Greene who can do it all. I think will only benefit a guy like Trevor Harris. If it is maybe Shea Patterson who takes over due to an injury, maybe due to lack of good play, I think it only helps a first-year starter quarterback like that as well. So, not that I'm not high on Saskatchewan. I think this is kind of an early preview of the battle that will take place throughout the CFL season of who's going to be in that third place for sure in a playoff spot. Because I don't believe, we can safely say that the fourth place team is going to cross over because of the final two teams in the East not being confident or not being competitive enough. I kind of fully expect. I'm sure Shane, you expect a team like Ottawa and maybe a team like Hamilton can prove me wrong. And I think one of those two teams will have a better record than the fourth place team in the West. And I don't think there's going to be a crossover. So I think it is truly kind of an early season preview of fighting for that final playoff spot in the West. Personally, I'm going to take Edmonton. So it's a clean sweep, which isn't the greatest for me and Blake, because I know we're going to pick the same one the next game. But Shane, is there any final thoughts, any other bets for this game that come to mind?
No, I mean, uh, I think this is going to be a very interesting game to watch. But personally, I'm taking the Elks on the spread, the money line, and I'm going to take the on the safe side. I think you should take the under on this. Two new offenses for the most part. Um, you're not. I don't know how well Saskatchewan's offense is going to be. It's the first game, so I would take the under um, on this one, and then take Elks on the money line and the spread heading into this weekend.
Sorry, Shane, this is too good not to throw up, but everyone wants to touch everyone wants to touch Thor. But moving to Sunday, and to recap, folks, all three of us picking the Elks in Saturday's matchup versus the Saskatchewan Roughriders. On Sunday, Blake, the long-awaited season debut for our BC Lions. It does suck, but I'm in the same way. I am kind of like, it's almost like the opposite of like when you kick off the season, you get to like enjoy the rest of the weekend. I think it's like a little bit different because I'm going to be able to enjoy the like start the first 3 days, and then Sunday I'm going to be able to enjoy one BC Lions game. Where it's a
Yeah,
little
no.
bit kind of
Yeah,
where it's a little bit
sorry, Cole, go ahead.
shitty is just like the excitement that I know is coming tomorrow, and it's not my team. It's great excitement, but it's like I just want to see our team play. So,
I know.
Blake, I will kick it to you first, buddy. And what are your thoughts when it comes to this matchup? And I don't need to say who you're picking.
Okay, so Vernon Adams is going to throw for 500 yards. The defense is going to pick off Cameron Dukes 10 times, and the Lions win 100-0. No. In all seriousness, I expect that the Lions, I mean, we kind of talked about it earlier, or at least you did, Cole, while I had to deal with that emergency. But I expect that the Lions will be able to score just enough points over that Argos defense, as the Argos offense just has too many question marks. I think the Lions defense is going to be too good for them this year. I would be highly surprised if they score more than 17 points. And I think the Lions will win quite handily. And I know the line for this one as well was also at 6.5. So I'll say the Lions win. I'll say they'll double up the Argonauts, and they will win by a final score of 34-17.
Okay, and Shane, what are your thoughts on the BC Lions traveling out east to the Toronto Argonauts?
So don't hate me, um,
That's okay.
but I think this is the upset of the week.
Okay.
Uh, and it's not because I think Toronto's better than BC.
Okay, there we go.
Toronto has a lot to prove without their reigning MOP. I think Cameron Dukes is a solid option at QB1. They still have a lot of the pieces. They brought in Carey to replace Ouellette. Like there are question marks, 100%. There's question marks on both sides of the field. The question and my concern is they play Sunday, and I think they play Friday, right? At home, their home opener's next Friday for BC.
No,
Saturday.
Saturday. How far ahead are they looking? we've seen it. We've seen it time and time again. Teams come out flat on the road. They're looking ahead to their home opener, uh, and with 50 Cent, with 50 plus thousand people in the stands, how much are they looking ahead? Can they stay focused and look at the game in front of them? And I know every player's like, "Oh, focus one game at a time," this, that, and the other thing. But I think we'd all be lying to ourselves if we didn't acknowledge and admit that there's some forward thinking into that environment in BC Place next weekend. So I personally think that it's one of those games where it's going to be a couple of drops here or there. It's going to be a mental lapse on defense. I think I think it's going to be a spread, but I have the uh, I have the Argos winning this game.
No, awesome, Shane. I'm glad that you like the different opinion. It's kind of lame when we all agree, and I don't think I think it's a better show when we can have all different opinions. So obviously, I disagree. Um, that being said, I don't agree with kind of Blake's kind of sentiment of doubling up on the Argos. I expect this to be a close game. Um, One, just kind of it being the first game of the year, I expect both teams to kind of just being a little bit slower out of the gate. Obviously, them having to wait all the way till Sunday. All the excitement building, kind of somewhat. Sometimes you can be so excited and then gas yourself out before you even get to the event. So I think this will be a little bit of a slower one, but I just think the question mark of Cameron Dukes is just too legitimate. I think the reason why Cameron Dukes, why I have faith in the Toronto Argonauts this season, um, is because of the obviously what I mentioned earlier, the both sides of the line of scrimmage. I think will keep them in a lot of ball games, offensively and defensively on that line. Probably the best whole offensive line in the CFL. From a defensive line perspective, a lot of I believe bringing a few familiar faces back. Obviously, they lose a guy like Quantez Stiggers, a few faces on that defense, but you bring a guy like Jake Seresna, sacrificing a guy like Curly Gittens on offense, I think is only going to help that defensive line with Jake Seresna coming in. So I think that offensive line, defensive line will keep them in a lot of ball games. But I just think BC, it'll be business as close to business as usual on offense. Obviously, you can't replace a guy like Keon Hatcher, a guy like Dominic Rhymes. But I think you have a three-headed kind of, I don't know if I'd say go as far to say monster quite yet, but I think you have a three-headed trio that you can be confident in. That I think Alexander Hollins is only he's proven 1,000-yard receiver. I think he's only going to get better in the CFL now. Javon Catoy, I think is on a, like I mentioned, upward trajectory. I think Justin McInnes will crack 1,000 yards. I think those guys will deliver. An addition of Will Stanback, I think, will only help as well. Like I mentioned earlier, I think he'll just take so much pressure off VA, being able to not feel like he has to do everything, not feel like he has to throw every touchdown, not like he feel like he has to get every first down. Where maybe on first down, you can kind of trust in a guy to maybe get you 4 or 5 yards, get in second and manageable. Um, I just have a little more confidence. I would think, Shane, excuse me, it's a 6 point spread between the teams.
6.5 point spread.
I will take, I guess, the Argos for the spread because I think it's going to be like more of a field goal type game. Maybe Sean White walks it off. Um, I think the Argos are going to be a good team, but I just think BC, obviously a lot of questions. But as I was talking about earlier, I think they were able to somewhat similarly, I guess, to Winnipeg, reload on the fly. Obviously, people like to talk about Matthew Betts leaving, stuff like that. Matthew Betts, Dominic Rhymes, two of the league's best, two of the elitist guys at their position. You could argue in the CFL, and it's not one for one replacing those guys by any means, but I think um, as a whole, that defensive line kind of will step up, and maybe not one guy will have 18 sacks, but maybe it's Sion Tiama having, double-digit sacks, Pete Robertson hopefully having double-digit sacks, and Christian Covington, Josh Banks, Marcus Moore, and those guys in the interior kind of causing havoc. And I just think BC will kind of be able to, like I mentioned, reload on the fly, stay good, and kind of get younger, if you will, as well at some of those positions. And I expect good things, but I'm sure people aren't surprised to hear that coming from a Lions fan. So, Shane, is there any other thoughts? What is the over/under on this game?
The over under is set at 46 and a half. So I would take
46
the
and a half.
over. I would take the over on this game.
Yeah, that's interesting. When it comes to mine, it's tough what I think about over under. I'm not a big over under guy to be honest, but 46 and a half points, that means they have to get about 47 combined points. So that's something like, 23, 24 type stuff. Anything like that will get you over the hump. And um, I guess I'll take the over as well. I'll predict 26-23 BC Lions win the game on Sunday. Or Shane, excuse me. Is there any final thoughts when it comes to BC and Toronto?
Yeah, I mean, if there's a Christian Covington stack um, parlay or stock bet that you can place, take the over on it. I don't care what the number is. I don't care if it's 2.5, 3.5. Take the over on his prop bet for over under on sacks because he will throw it down this weekend.
I agree, man. Like I was mentioning a little bit earlier, to I guess use like I kind of contradict myself to use in preseason. I was kind of ISO camming a little bit, but he was kind of shucking some of those offensive linemen around. Now it is the Edmonton Elks uh, backups that he was playing against, but I think he's going to be pretty impactful on the interior there. Folks, it's definitely you love to see like the sack numbers and stuff like that. I really think Christian Covington's value is going to come as well in the kind of the hidden numbers, the TFLs, the once he's so dominant that he's going to get double teamed, he's opening up, on the edge, Sione Tama flying off the edge for sacks. A guy like Josh Banks maybe being able to get a few more sacks because he's kind of been that guy that's been eating up those double teams for the last years. So I expect big things from Christian Covington. So Blake, I guess any final thoughts before we have one last question for Shane?
No, I think we've all pretty much covered the game. I don't mind Shane's prediction. It also came out today, which was an interesting stat that I didn't even really pay attention to. But it's the fact that the BC Alliance haven't won in Toronto since I believe 2018 was the last game that they won. So they haven't. 2019 they lost, and then all the years since COVID they lost as well. So that'll be interesting to see if they can kind of, get that monkey off their back here on Sunday.
Shane, so before we get you out of here, buddy, we will not exclude your Ottawa Redblacks, I guess, like the CFL did for week one, and I will allow you to take the floor. Obviously, um, we don't need to tell anybody. The CFL needs a 10th franchise so that this doesn't happen, but obviously the Ottawa Redblacks are on a bye this week. Um, just I guess quickly, what are kind of your some thoughts and maybe why should fans across the CFL tune in to the Ottawa Redblacks this year?
Yeah, I mean, I think I've said in the last couple of years, on paper, they're one of the better teams in the East. They're one of the better teams in the league. But there's a reason they play these games. They don't just made the Grey Cup based off what paper says, right? Drew Brown looks like a poised quarterback. He takes what the defense gives him. He won't push the ball into like double coverage or triple coverage just to make a play. If there's a 5 yard out or his running back's leaking out and he's open, he's gonna pass it off to them and let his playmakers make plays with the ball in their hand. Defense is gonna be great. They were one of the better teams last year. Um, Hopefully this year they're not spending like 60% of the time on the field. So maybe they'll be a little bit more rested. They'll make some more plays. Um, I think they're going to be missing a couple of key defensive players to start the season. We won't know until next week. Um, but I think overall, this team is going to be a lot of fun to watch. Um, and they're going to be an exciting football team, and they could easily. I don't want to go as far as say they're going to win the East, but I wouldn't be surprised if they won the East as well. Their over under for total wins is 6.5. I'm taking the over like the Elks. It should be good football. Like I think this is going to be a team that actually puts up points consistently.
Awesome. Well, Shane, thank you so much. And hopefully we can see you on a regular basis. Like I mentioned, if it works out, man, you're more than welcome to come on the show every week and we can do our picks together. You can preview the lines of the week, all that good stuff. Let us know what's going on with Bet99. Obviously, we appreciate all the support, all the contributions you do for us as well. Obviously, making the thumbnails, stuff like that. So before you get out of here, Shane, where can the people find you on social media as well as 13th Man Sports?
Yeah, you can find 13th Man Sports on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook and Threads. For myself, you can find me on Twitter at SR underscore designs underscore and on Instagram at SR underscore designs. We're going to be posting out stuff on a fairly regular basis. Um, there's a power rankings article coming out tomorrow from you. Um, there's going to be some Sun stuff coming out, some CDL stuff coming out, and obviously some more CFL stuff coming out as the games come out. I have my futures picks coming out tomorrow morning or tomorrow afternoon. Um, so it's going to be interesting. It's going to be an interesting season, but hopefully you'll see a lot of us going through the summer.
Absolutely. Last but not least, boys, I lied. Great question from Brian here. And I know Shane's going to want to tap in here. Who has the better new unis, Sask or Ottawa? I'm going with Ottawa. Personally, I know people, the reaction from Sask it seemed like a pretty good one, but I just didn't, on like, if you look closely, the green I just don't love. So I'm going to go personally with Ottawa for better uni. And Blake, what do you think?
Yeah, I'm gonna have to go with Ottawa as well. A lot of fans over there in the prairies wanted that black uniform for you. I have it on good sources from people in Regina. You're not getting those black uniforms back. So this, I believe it's like Obsidian or something like that. Green is the closest that you're gonna get. I really do like the Ottawa or the Riders' new uniforms, but I think the Red Blacks are just simply better.
So personally, I love the Riders' third jerseys. That really dark green, the three-tone green looks really nice. Big fan of them. But Ottawa's 100%. They should have been the jerseys when they first came back in the league. Um, I mocked them up, not the exact ones that they put out, but I put out a mock of what it would look like, what the Rough Riders, an updated Rough Riders jersey would look like, Rough Riders Red Blacks inspired jersey would look like. Um, Last year, it did really well. Like this fan base loved the Rough Riders. I think it was one of the bigger mistakes that the CFL ever did was to let them fold in '96. Um, just to come back as the Renegades. Uh, this is the 98th year of Ottawa football in what is the CFL. Um, so I don't know. I got it. Ottawa's uniforms are arguably the best jerseys released this year. I don't know if you guys saw Edmonton's, but those are atrocious. I don't I don't understand Edmonton's refusal to go back to the gold numbers.
I
Like
agree.
the
Yeah,
iconic look.
I saw that as well. I didn't even see the numbers. I just saw the jersey, but
Yeah, it was green numbers with a gold outline. It's like, why? Why not just go back to the gold numbers? That was an iconic look for you guys when you were winning like five straight Grey Cups. Like you're celebrating 75 years. Why not just go back to the? Especially since they used those jerseys in like their release video. So I was 100% expecting the gold numbers. It's I think they can't seem to do anything right now, off the field and on the field.
Well, Shane, thanks for joining us, buddy, here tonight. Hopefully, we'll see you next Wednesday and enjoy week one, my friend.
Appreciate it. I will see you next Wednesday. And I should be home. I don't think I'm working that night, so there won't be any more bus rides and videos. That's for sure.
All good, Shane. Appreciate you for
thanks,
tuning
Shane.
in, buddy. And we'll talk to you
Yeah,
next week. That is Shane Ryan from 13th Man Sports that was joining us. Shane, thank you so much. As he mentioned, on the way home from work on the bus. So I know Blake's a on the road contributor sometimes as well. Life happens, folks. Sometimes you have to be in the car in a vehicle. Sometimes you just have to make it work. So before we get out of here, Blake, Brian's just such a good chat
He
contributor.
is.
He says, "What the F is Obasidon?" That's the same question I had when I saw that as well, Brian. So, not sure, but it means green, I'm guessing.
I don't
So,
know. Yeah,
uh,
it means like maybe Steven can answer us that, but yeah, it means like some sort of green or I don't even know.
Green, red,
so
or yellow.
Blake, we've done it. The week one show check off the books. I can't believe it. It is gonna fly by just like the offseason did. Next thing you know, we're gonna be week 18, week 19, week 20, getting into the playoffs.
What?
I cannot wait, my friend. It is going to be a fun ride. I hope everybody that's tuning in here is first and foremost subscribe so you guys don't miss out. If you guys aren't subscribed to the YouTube, please at least follow us on social media. That is at Canadian Football Fanatics on Instagram, at underscore CF Fanatics on Twitter or X, excuse me, whatever the kids are
Or
calling it these
Twix.
days. What I'm calling it Twitter personally, that's how it's always going to be known to me. So follow us on there. The show will be streamed every week, not only on YouTube, but on the CFF Twitter page as well as my personal page. So anybody that's tuning in, please follow all that good stuff. Be a friend and tell a friends, folks, that you can catch Blake and I every Wednesday night, 6 p.m. sharp. We will be talking all CFL,
Oh, my
most
office so
importantly, all
much.
things BC
Oh, the
Lions.
office so big,
Blake,
so much.
any final thoughts, buddy, on week one and the BC Lions before we get out of here?
No, I think we've pretty much covered it all this week. Cole, let's just kick the ball and let's see what happens this week. We'll talk about all the week one stuff next week and then preview week two and, of course, our BC Lions home opener against the Calgary Stampeders.
I guess that is a perfect way to end it, Blake. As much as I'm excited for week one, I cannot wait for June 15th, my friend. It is going to be a party. Anybody that is there in BC, in Vancouver, excuse me, on June 15th, come say hi to Blake and I. We will be there bright and early. We will be having a good time, possibly maybe a couple wobbly pops being consumed. But come say hi. It'll be a great day for football fans. Blake, thanks so much for joining the show tonight, buddy. As always, I will chat with you throughout the weekend. Everybody that's tuning in, enjoy the week, and we will see you guys next Wednesday.
Thanks, everyone.